Welcome to Baha'i Books and Authors, a podcast which introduces to you writers and the works they've penned related to the Baha'i faith. We'll explore the inspiration, the process, and the stories behind their work. I'm your host, Jan Grammer. This podcast is produced by World Unity Media, which also produces Baha'i audiobooks. It was a visionary idea. Create a space where Black Baha'i men could come together to intensively pray, immerse themselves in the ocean of Baha'u'llah's revelation, sing, connect through their shared experiences of growing up Black in America, and heal. That vision took root in 1987 with the founding of what would become known as the Black Men's Gathering, or BMG. To say this annual gathering was important would be a vast understatement. It was deeply meaningful and profoundly impactful to the individuals, to the participants collectively, and to the many others at home and abroad who were touched by them. The BMG eventually expanded in such a way that many of the men traveled together to other countries to give of their time and of their hearts in service. Anchor of Faith, the enduring spirit of the Black Men's Gathering, is more than a historical account. It's a deep and rich chronicle of soul-searching, connection, personal growth and transformation, where lasting bonds of love and friendship and collective community growth resulted. It offers a model to anyone longing to adopt or nurture a spiritual focus. It is, of course, a process available to all. I am truly honored to welcome co-authors Richard Thomas, a founding member of the Gathering, and Frederick Landry to talk about their powerful book. Welcome, gentlemen.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Richard, you're one of the original 12 who attended the Black Men's Gathering, invited by the man with the vision, Dr. William Roberts. Tell us how it came to be.
In 1987, when Billy invited us, some of us had been Baha'is for some time. I had been a Baha'i since 1962 and had been very much involved in various kinds of race relations activities related to the Black experience. But Billy, who was an auxiliary board member in the 80s, was very concerned about the state of not only Black males throughout the country, but also he was concerned about Black males within the Baha'i faith. Many Blacks had become Baha'is in the 60s and 70s, and he noticed that they were leaving the faith, or their participation in the faith was declining. And so his concern was, what can I do to activate them? Also, there was this notion among those Black Baha'i men who were involved, they should be sort of integrators, that they shouldn't gather together. But also, Black Baha'i men, when they looked around, they didn't see many other men like themselves. And so Billy was concerned about that. He sent letters to several of us asking if we would participate in this meeting. And we met in Greensboro, North Carolina. We didn't quite know what it was all about, but we would soon find out.
So many of the recounts of the people who participated were of such profound connection, so much love and tears with the singing and drumming among them. I can only picture this very strong spirit in the gatherings. Frederick, did you experience it like that?
I did. It was really like that from day one. I didn't know very many people there at all. The moment that you're there, the spirit created was one where you felt accepted. And that was before anybody even talked to you. You're really, I think, just immersed in love and just people accepted you. And I think that growing up, kind of always seeing myself as different. I was adopted. I was a member of the Baha'i faith. My natural parents, one was Black, one was white. So not really ever feeling like I belonged. But then being there, it just was a feeling of acceptance.
Richard, among so many transformative moments over the 25 years, what was one, maybe two, that have stayed with you?
That is a profound question for a number of reasons. One is when you read that last chapter where individuals talked about the impact that the BMG had on them, you probably noticed that there were several aspects of the transformation. One was some of them had a lot of internal racism. They had a sense of racial inferiority. And being in a multiracial faith, they had to struggle to find their niche. Sometimes there wasn't a lot of reinforcement for these individuals. And so what I noticed was that they began to feel that the faith belonged to them. They weren't just someone who had been accepted by others reluctantly, but they were an organic part of that faith. Another part that really amazed me was the way in which they became so connected to Baha'i teachings, to Baha'i prayers. We would pray for hours and hours and hours, and you would see some amazing expressions of love and unity. I came from a family of black males who didn't hug. It was considered to be a sign of weakness. It was in the gathering where I first began to feel free to express my feelings to other black men as well as to hug them. And I noticed that among these men, and they noticed it themselves. And so just for black men to feel that deep respect and love and affection and to be able to express it was, for me, a great example. But I think the other example was to see how connected they became to the teachings, how invested they became in wanting to go out and teach the faith, wanting to go to Africa, wanting to share the faith with their friends at home. So I think those are some of the key examples.
What was the impact on the local communities when the men would go back home after one of the gatherings? Maybe you, Frederick, can speak about your own community.
You know, one of the things that I took back was having a level of, I dare say, like audacity and being able to feel empowered to do things I felt were part of the plan, part of, we're trying to affect change, not only in ourselves, but also throughout our communities. And being able to do that through, offering study circles or having devotionals. But I think what the gathering gave was it allowed us to do things in a different way, our own way. I oftentimes heard, we were able to do things and add our own flavor. That was, I think, quite instrumental in going back to one's community, because then you're able to offer prayers, but you're doing that with drums, or you're doing different things and maybe doing things in a creative way that others might not naturally think of, but you felt supported and validated and you pushed through. And so sometimes you just might not be deterred from, others that were doubting the process or doubting what you were doing, because that really wasn't what it was all about. It was about, really offering up yourself and really giving back to your community.
I understand you were serving at the World Center when groups of the BMG would visit the Holy Land.
Yes, I was there in 1999, but I think that something that I don't think has been said that I thought was really important was here I was at the Baha'i World Center. I don't recall that there were few, if any, other young men of African descent there from the United States. And so seeing a lot of these men come through there, it was more than just inspiring. It kind of laid a framework, almost like a marching order of that's possible. These are individuals who were really, I think, engaged in becoming better people and also really kind of giving back to their community. And that was really wonderful. And honestly, it kind of lit a fire in me that I recall, I worked in security at the World Center. I enjoyed my time there, but in many ways, I just wanted to get back. I wanted to be part of that. And I just felt like there was something that I wanted to be and something that I wanted to contribute back.
That's very significant. Thank you for sharing it. Richard, why did the Black Men's Gathering end in 2012?
The Universal House of Justice wrote a letter to the BMG. It was also in response to a letter that the BMG had written, basically saying that they were ready to move out from this fortress and to the larger society. And the Universal House of Justice conveyed to the BMG that it was time to end, to conclude its activity and to move out and to participate in the larger activity. And I think that at that time, many of the BMG members were about ready. And so after 25 years, and the House made this very clear, after 25 years of support, that we were ready and we had to move out of this secure fortress and start serving in a different capacity.
Frederick, in the wider conversation about race and healing and faith-based community building, how do you see the legacy of BMG influencing future generations, especially of young Black men?
I think it's important to realize that when we wrote the book, it was to be more than just a recount of the Black Men's Gathering experience. It really was to show that there was a model for personal and community-based transformation. And that itself is going to be really working with all members of society, not just having an insular perspective. So being able to expand outside of your group, be it men or men of African descent or Baha'i men of African descent, continue to broaden your focus and your perspective to really engaging with all members of society. That, I believe, is really what the gathering is all about. And that's that anchor of our own personal faith. So it was the gathering, yes, but being able to really connect on a deeper level with your fellow neighbors and your fellow human beings. And I think that was something that the gathering allowed. And it also just showed that there's that model. And so it's not just for men of African descent, it's for all to be able to realize that we are here being able to devote ourselves to a higher power. We're here to connect with one another and to really do so in a spirit of togetherness and unity. It's there. I've seen it. We're not that far out from when the gathering, formally concluded, but I think that we'll continue to see those effects throughout generations.
I have to ask you, what was the pylon?
Well, a pylon, that's really quite a beautiful story. I didn't actually know what the pylon was until writing the book and talking to Billy Roberts about really what was the origin of this pylon. I participated, I observed, I was a recipient of the pylon, but never really understood where it came from. And where that was, he had mentioned growing up in the South and sometimes during the winter time, being on the schoolyard playground, one or more kids didn't have enough clothing. To kind of warm that child up, all the other kids would gather around and kind of pile on and form really a kind of a security blanket, something to really warm that child up. He recounted it at his first gathering that just being in the gathering, at the gathering, it felt like it took him back to that time. It felt like it was a pylon. So that actually became a physical act where maybe there was a brother who needed some support or needed some love, and it might come at the direction or call of Billy or somebody else that this brother needed that. And we would really just gather around that individual and really offer support. It was a physical action, but I can tell you being part of it on both ends, on the giving and the receiving end, it warms your heart and it just really buoyed your spirits.
Richard, what's your take on the pylon?
What I noticed the gradual evolution of that, let us call it ritual. Throughout these sessions, people would become increasingly more willing to be vulnerable. And that was very unique among Black men. When you saw someone sharing his story and maybe breaking out in tears, which was an unusual thing among Black men, many Black men, you would hear someone say, "Pile on." And they would surround that person as if to say it's all right to be vulnerable. It evolved into a core ritual. And I always felt that if you were up there and you were sharing and you began to manifest some vulnerability, if you were crying, then they would come and they would pile on. And so that was, to me, always a key part of it. It's all right to be vulnerable. It's all right to share. And so here we come.
These gatherings, I don't even have the words. So amazing, so deep, so profound. A word that's come up over and over in our conversation. I think everybody would like to be a part of that kind of gathering. Thank you so much for joining us today. Anchor of Faith, The Enduring Spirit of the Black Men's Gathering by Frederick Landry and Richard Thomas is available on Baha'iBookstore.com or wherever you get your distribution services. Subscribe or follow Baha'i Books and Authors with your chosen podcast platform. This podcast is produced by World Unity Media.